Who would have thought that shortly after 9 a.m. this morning, when we commenced debate on this bill, that we would be here at around 9 p.m. tonight, still debating the same bill? And, sir, that is occurring for two very simple reasons. One of the very simple reasons is the Leader of the House. And the other very simple reason is that this bill is a blatant abuse of process. It is an abuse of the House, because the speech that minister read but did not understand is a speech about the bill as introduced. That is a speech about the bill that was considered by the Finance and Expenditure Committee. That was a speech about the bill that was put out for public submissions. And it had nothing to do with the 60 or 70% of this bill which was introduced under urgency at the 11th hour by supplementary order paper. And not only was it 70% of the content, but it was about 95% of the value by tax revenue, because it is the SOP that introduces fundamental structural amendments that impact over $2 billion a year of tax loss currently funneled through LAQCs. That is the amendment, and not the bill, that takes the current LAQC rules and introduces an entirely new class of company called the look-through company, which represents a very timid step in the direction of making it less easy for corporate arbitrage to write off company tax losses on personal income. It would possibly have been a measure that one day could have possibly been supported by other parties had it been through proper scrutiny. But the reason we are opposing this bill tooth and nail in the House today is because the government, by malice and intent, has denied the public of New Zealand the opportunity to participate in that debate. Denied the public of New Zealand the opportunity to participate in that debate. This is a totally inappropriate misuse of parliamentary process, and in my view was made worse, not better, by the lame excuse of the Minister of Revenue, who said that just because it had been announced in the budget and they'd put out a discussion paper, that it was legitimate somehow to bring it to the House by SOP. I'm afraid not, because as a matter of simple logic, to do that for this bill would entitle any government to do that for any tax bill, because very few affect more revenue than this amendment does at $2 billion. And if that is the case, then we could kiss goodbye to the generic tax policy process that is one of the most valuable institutions of our fiscal tradition, because it has been respected across both sides of the House, across multiple bills for many years, and this bill undermines it. This SOP undermines it. It is, of course, the LAQC issue that has dominated the substance of the debate, and it dominates 3 parts of the bill over 70 pages of the amendments. The member got an LAQC? No, the member does not have an LAQC. Has that member got an LAQC? Oh, jolly good. Well, enough Kiwis do, Mr Brownlee, to avoid $2.5 billion worth of tax. And that's why we care about it, because your government is running a $13 billion per year deficit, and you could do with some of that if you could bother to clamp down on the avoidance. But because you have not, and because you have not given the public or the business community the opportunity for a fair say, that is why you are going to be here all weekend with your paltry list of pre-Christmas rush legislation. All weekend, because you, the Leader of the House, have screwed up the process. You have overloaded the urgency motion, and you have allowed your Minister of Revenue to introduce a totally inappropriate supplementary order paper. And it is one thing for the Minister to make that mistake. It is entirely another for the Leader of the House to fall for the pressure, no doubt from officials, through the Minister, that this just had to be done. Well, it didn't have to be done. And it's not going to be done easily, because the members of the Labour opposition are going to fight this bill and have fought this bill clause by clause, part by part, line by line, to the utter limits of parliamentary process. Mr Speaker, The bill also deals with the matter of GST and the opportunity for zero rating of some transactions. And that has allowed, and you have ruled in scope, debate about the zero rating of other forms of goods and services, most notably fresh fruit and vegetables. And New Zealanders in their homes and in their workplaces know that these are tough times, these are tough years, and household budgets are under pressure. And it's just this week, sir, that we've learned some important new facts, that the average household is $30 a week worse off than they were last year, $18 per average income earner. And we know now that for 7 straight quarters, annualised GDP per capita has gone backwards. That's real income. And that, sir, means that the average Kiwi is worse off today than they were when this national government was elected. Worse off today than when this national government was elected. And that is why the polls overwhelmingly show that nobody buys the PR spin from the beehive that the tax switch has made them better off. They don't buy it because it's not true. They don't buy it because they know that they might have $10 in the wallet, but the groceries are costing $30 and the power bill's costing $5, and so on and so forth. And there is no relief in this bill. Even though it empowers the zero rating of GST, it contains no help for hard-working Kiwi families, and that is why Labor is going to bring that help. That is why Labor is going to deliver GST zero-rated fresh fruit and vegetables. The bill talks about KiwiSaver, sir, but it takes no opportunity to restore the cuts that this government has so short-sightedly made to the single most successful savings scheme in New Zealand's history. The single most successful scheme which was undermined by this government when it cut employer contributions and it cut government incentives in half. And for that reason, the rate of growth of the stock of savings has been reduced. And that, sir, is a very serious problem when Standard & Poor's is about to drop our credit rating because we have an appalling savings gap. And that brings us full circle, sir, because what Standard & Poor's told us was not only are we bad savers, but we're very bad investors. Because such savings that we did have, instead of putting into productive businesses that would create jobs and incomes, things that people say the National Party once used to represent, people put their money in housing. They effectively borrowed internationally to bid each other's house prices up. Why? One key reason, sir, was because there was a tax incentive to do it. And it's embedded in this bill. And it's still now perpetuated by this bill. The tax incentive that you could run a loss on a rental property and write it off, not only against the future earnings of the property, which would be fine, but against the personal income of the owner or the shareholder. And there is no logic, and there is certainly no economic rationale for that being continued. And so this bill, in summary, Mr. Speaker, is a sham. It's a sham and it's a wasted opportunity. There was a good process at the FEC, a good process dealing with the original bill that made some amendments, made some improvements, and brought, and credit to the chairman, Craig Foss, brought the committee to consensus. And that consensus was shattered on Tuesday when this enormous SOP was introduced. This enormous, this short-sighted, this wasteful, this redundant SOP. Redundant why? Because when the Labor Party returns to the Treasury benches in 2011, one of our first acts will be to crack down on tax avoidance. Because to us, in tough times, personal responsibility means everybody pays their fair share. That's the Kiwi way. Fair suck of the sav. Fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And we all put our shoulders to the wheel in hard times to keep the truck moving forward. And that means less outlets, less loopholes for fancy pants corporate tax advisors and lawyers. And we need to make those loopholes dramatically smaller. And this bill had the opportunity to do that, and it failed. It failed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a matter of deep regret to the Labor opposition that although we have used every opportunity in this debate, in our heart of hearts, we know that the scrutiny that we have been able to give to the detailed technical content of areas of this SOP has not been adequate, anywhere near adequate relative to the importance of the